Well, it's October now, guys, and it's been a really long time since I last did a podcast kind of video with a friend of mine on here. It's been, I think, 5 years, but this is the first time Jacob is ever on the channel because this guy is a big Dexter fan, and he introduced me to Dexter about 2 years ago now, and I figured since it's October, we may as well just talk about the show because I watched it for the first time all with this guy. Now, Jacob, I just wanted you to introduce yourself as being a big Dexter fan yourself.
Of course.
Why are you such a big Dexter fan?
Yeah, so I'll get into that. I will just say, for anyone else, like you said, I'm Jacob. I'm Andrew's roommate. We met at Temple on our Movie Mafia podcast together.
That's right.
So doing this YouTube podcasting stuff is nothing new, honestly. It's crazy that I probably haven't sat down and done this with you in years. It feels like it was just yesterday. But Dexter, my all-time favorite TV show, something I found, I want to say, in the COVID era, kind of, 2021 maybe, right around that point. Just something I found on Netflix. I recall being a kid, and I mean, this show came out maybe 2008, I want to, or 2012?
2006.
2006 to
13.
2006 to 2013, yeah.
Yep.
So somewhere around that, yeah. So I remember being a kid and having my parents watching the show and telling me, hey, you can't be down here. So I used to think, why can't I be down there? What's going on with the show? I saw it recommended to me on Netflix, jumped on it, and I loved it. It is just one of those shows that has everything for me. It's got action. It's low-key got some comedy elements. It's so kind of funny out of nowhere. It has a really great romance that's totally underappreciated throughout the entire show. There's really good love story there. And then, of course, it's so fresh and unique. You cannot find a show like Dexter. There's nothing like Dexter out there.
Dude, I never thought we would even finish the show because it took us 2 years, but everything you just said is totally true because I never even would have watched the show if it weren't for you. And then just by everything you just said, it reminded me of all the good times we had watching the show and exactly why it is considered one of the greatest shows of all time. All those things you just said, it's definitely true. And we started the show back in September of 2022 and did not finish it until at the end of August. So we wanted to give it a little time to mesh in my head, as well as on your, fifth rewatch of the show?
Yeah, I watched it myself twice through, watched it with my brother all the way through.
Yep. Yeah, and the thing you always told me about the show was that it starts out great, first 4 seasons amazing, and then after that, the show really goes downhill by season 5, which is not true, by the way. It's not really until season 6. 7 is also obviously as good as seasons 1 through 4, but then season 8 is when it starts going downhill again. So we'll get into all of that. We'll talk about every single season. We'll give our grades like we agreed on, and then I guess we can talk some villains too if you wanted to rank them at the very end or whatever else we wanted to do. But I figured the best way to do this would be to go through every single season one by one, give our grade, just talk about each season a little bit, and then maybe rank the seasons at the very end. All right, ready for this?
Let's do it.
Spoiler warning ahead. Okay, so season 1 was a slow burn from what I remember when we watched it 2 years ago, but it gets really, really good towards the middle and especially towards the end. The ice truck killer was an exciting mystery to untangle. I love how they didn't reveal the identity until halfway through when eventually it was revealed to be the love interest of Deb in the season.
Something that never happened again. Every other killer was revealed to us.
Right.
And every other season wasn't a mystery to the audience.
Until you watch season 8 with that.
I wish I didn't know who the killer was.
Right. Seriously. But I loved how they just didn't reveal him, and then it just keeps you intrigued the entire time by doing that. And it's mainly great from the storyline. I think that is easily a top 3 storyline in all of Dexter. Out of all 8 seasons, I think the whole thing with Dexter and his brother, with that being the reveal at the very end, so well done. Rudy was his original name, right?
Yes.
And then it's Brian eventually revealed. So I thought that stuff was great, and you would have to agree that's the best storyline of season 1.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. My opinions about season 1 have varied a lot. Great season. I love it. But after rewatching, like you said, a bunch of times, I give it a little bit more criticism, but I also want to appreciate that this is the first season. They are adapting it from a book, and a book that wasn't super popular, wasn't breaking records, just good. So they're taking a book, and they have no idea how it's going to play. If you've gone back and watched interviews now with Jennifer Carpenter or Michael C. Hall or anyone, they had a lot of questions. I mean, I remember reading the interview or listening to interviews from Jennifer saying, we really don't think this show is going to get picked up. I mean, we did our pilot episode, but the main character is a serial killer and you're supposed to root for him? Yeah, I was looking for other work, is the type of stuff she was saying. Yeah. So this was not some big budget HBO production that had $100 million sunk into it. Right. Rings of Power. So this was just really a show based off a book. And I give that immense credit for having, sticking to your guns and just going for it. Yeah. And it was great.
Yeah.
I do have to say, I give it a little bit of a credit for that. Also have to say it starts slow. Yeah. They're trying to get their footing. Who are these characters? My biggest negatives with this season are how you have these LaGuerta flirting with Dexter. You go back and watch that season. Yeah. She's putting the moves on him for like 4 or 5 episodes. Mm-hmm. It's weird. Never gets brought up again, thank God. But stuff that when you watch back, you're like, why was this a thing? Another random side plot when him and Rudy go and visit Dexter's dad's house.
Yeah.
He sees his dad. He looks into his whole dad's life in this other town. He buries or cremates his dad. And we never speak of him again. There's no mention again of what his personality was like. Does Harrison ever ask about him? No. Does anyone care? No, no one ever cares about.
Yeah, just kind of forget about it.
Just a random complete, and even the mom, who was a huge focal point of season 1, not really addressed so much in future seasons. I mean, here and there mentioned, and it was my mom the reason I did this, but she might as well have been a main character in season 1.
I did write this down too, that I loved all the flashbacks. I loved how intense it was when it introduced Harry and showed the flashbacks of him and Dexter and him trying to teach Dexter the way that he should be doing things with the code. I loved all of that. That stuff was what kind of initially got me hooked onto the show. And then eventually when you get into the Ice Truck Killer, that's when it really hits its peak in season 1. I guess for me, like the one thing I didn't like about season 1 was it's a new show for me, and I was so interested in the Ice Truck stuff. I was interested in the romance between Rita and Dexter, as well as when Paul comes back into the fold in season 1. That stuff was great. I loved all of that. But sometimes it just got a little bit annoying when they would constantly go to side characters that Dexter had to kill. I thought that kind of stuff, just as a new viewer, got old after a while. It gets better in later seasons, but to not keep a focus on the main storylines early on, like sometimes that could kind of got a little bit annoying for me when they just kept cutting to Dexter trying to get new kills.
I agree, and I think the reason that is because we didn't know much about the Ice Truck Killer. We were only learning about it in small snippets, so we were constantly left wanting more. I think when you get to a future season, when it's, we'll talk about seasons when we get there, but other seasons, you'll see it's not such a slow burn to reveal your killer. So you don't really get that, like, you get to go, okay, here's Dexter's kills, and then here is Miami Metro going after this person. Okay, now we're back to this. And it flows a little bit better.
Yeah.
Especially when you know who it is. You have a little bit more baseline knowledge, I feel like.
Right.
I feel like our knowledge of the Ice Truck Killer was so limited. And it was completely tied to Dexter because Miami Metro was always 3 steps behind because he was targeting Dexter. So Dexter really had to be completely involved in him. Right. Whereas if you go to season 3, the Skinner had literally 0 involvement with Dexter Morgan until the last 10 minutes of the show, the season. So it is just one of those instances where, like, Dexter was so tied to him that when you had Dexter doing other stuff besides going after him, it felt weird.
Yeah. And plus I remember looking back, like, There was that Doak storyline where he was involved with the police who were dirty cops. And I remember like episode 4 of season 1, that was probably my favorite early episode of the first season. A lot of really good storylines came from that episode. But I just remember before that, episodes 2 and 3, there was that whole Doak storyline with the cops.
Is that the one where the cops set him up?
Yeah, they put the bag over his head, they're about to kill him, and then
it turns out they weren't really setting him up that much because they were using him to get another guy, and it was all because of some other undercover. Yeah, just stuff that didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. that was for me season 1. That was the only downfall, but overall, great season between the Ice Truck Killer stuff, the past of Dexter being revealed slowly throughout the season, the flashbacks with Harry, all the romance stuff with Rita and Paul getting involved. I loved all of that, and Deb, of course, almost marrying Dexter's brother, and then
she said yes.
That was all crazy stuff. But all that was great. It was just a few of the side kills from Dexter I got annoyed by because I didn't think they were that interesting. I just was mostly interested in the Ice Truck Killer stuff. But if I had to give this season my grade, I would go 9 out of 10. What would you go?
I'd go 8.5.
Okay.
I just think it's just a little below there. I'm reserving that 9 out of 10 for what's to come later. Yeah. I think the slow start to the season and the fact that outside of the Harry and flashbacks, and then the Ice Truck Killer and Dexter stuff, and then some of the really good Deborah stuff, outside of that main cluster, I think everything else was, I agree, a little bit lacking. But that's just them getting their footing. Oh. So
I think that then leads us into your favorite season of the show, season 2, right?
Right. So season 2 is my all-time favorite season. I can't tell if I'm just that contrarian where I just won't go with season 4 because everyone else does, or if I just genuinely love 2. I mean, I really think it's the latter. Great season. It's so interesting having no main villain.
Right.
I mean, Dokes is the villain. I know they tried to build him up as a lot of officer-related shootings.
Right.
And I think they started to realize that people love Dokes, and Dokes is too good of a person. So when you try to make Dexter someone you root for, having him go up against a legitimate innocent, someone who isn't a rapist, a murderer, or a killer, it kind of is tough to root for Dexter. So they tried to even the odds a bit by making Dokes a real jerk. And then also having these side things to kind of keep the audience a little bit giving them an excuse to root for Dexter almost.
Right. Yeah. See, that's the thing we talked about a lot towards the later seasons, and in particular season 8. I thought season 8, you have Dexter. He's the main character who's a anti-villain, I guess we can call him, who kills bad people, but he's also serial killer. He's done a lot of terrible things. And by season 8, like in shows like Breaking Bad and Barry and whatnot, you have all these other shows that involve guys that have killed a lot of people, done a lot of bad things. By the final season, they're always on the run, or they die at the very end of the show or whatever. But in season 8, that did not happen. Season 2, meanwhile, felt more like a finale season in a way, because Dexter is what would you always say? He's like
under the gun.
Under the gun, correct?
He's under the gun.
Yeah. So he's always under the gun in season 2, and that's what I wrote down here. I said that season 2, absolutely the best storyline is Dexter as the Bay Harbor Butcher, and Dokes slowly catching on to him. I remember they're in that the bowling alley in the first episode of season 2.
Yeah.
And Little Chino eventually gets introduced. There's some side killings, but Dokes is always just on the Dexter in this season. I thought that was so good, and eventually it all culminates at the very end. I think it's episode 9 or 10 when eventually Dokes finds him on the dock.
Yeah, that's an incredible moment. And there's just, what I love about season 2 is there's so many side moments. Obviously, you have the all-time great moments everyone's going to think about. I don't, want to curse on this channel, but the surprise mother, literally,
So great,
that's
great.
A moment that 90% of people out there, at least in your 20s or 30s or younger, know that moment, and some people don't even know what shows that from.
Yeah.
When I watched Dexter live, I remember sitting in my bed late at night, binging this show, and then seeing that and going, oh my God, this isn't Dexter? Yeah. I never knew that. Did they use this meme? Or I couldn't, I was blown away.
It's so good.
So you have moments like that. You have moments like where, obviously, where he confronts him in his side forensic room, where he says, I own you, and headbutts him.
That was great.
Great moment that gets him thrown off the force and all that. And then, of course, you have Lundy this season, which is an incredible character we get introduced to. Now you have Dokes and an FBI agent, Lundy, going after him. He really fell under the gun. Yeah. You have Rita getting closer, starting to put some stuff together, the stuff with Paul, and then the AA, and then also or NA, whatever, and then that leads to another great moment of him accidentally tricking Dokes into thinking that he was an alcoholic or a drug addict or whatever, or drug addict, and Dokes actually got off of his case for an episode or two. And that whole sequence, and then the sequence where he's standing on the altar or whatever there, talking about his addiction in a very vulnerable way, not giving specifics, but truly those are his feelings about his dark passenger. It's really interesting. You see into the mind of him this season more than any other season, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, so all of that stuff was, again, like season 1, really well done. For me, the only thing that held this season back was the Lila stuff where he goes to AA, she becomes his sponsor, she falls in love with Dexter, and then Rita catches on, she wants to get back with him, she gets jealous, they break up, he has sex with Lila, but then he realizes, oh, she's crazy, I want Rita back. I didn't really love the love triangle stuff, I know you did, but I thought it just kind of held the season back a little bit, just like those small storylines and side stories in season 1 for me. But still, then again, they did a really good job of evening it out with all the excellent Bay Harbor Butcher and Doke stuff. A few other random things I wrote in here. Rita's mother was oddly in this season and then never appears again. You have Deb, who starts dating this guy at the gym, who she moves on very quickly from this guy, only after an episode or two, and just immediately goes to Lundy. But overall, I think this was a really good season. It's up there for one of my favorites as well. I gave it an 8.5. What would you give it?
Yeah, I have my reviews here. Let me see. I gave it a 9.5.
9.5?
So this is, I believe, my highest rated season. Yeah, it is. This is my highest rated season of the show. I think the biggest, if I had to take that half a point off, it's the fact that everything culminates in not the finale, but the episode before the finale.
Yeah.
And that, and then ending with the Lila stuff, it's unfortunate because they had to wrap up her storyline and her character. That's when we're at the weakest with her character. Right. But I actually do like her this season. I think it makes a lot of sense that she's brought in because Dexter is essentially, he's in his mid-20s at this point or late 20s or whatever. But he's really a 16-year-old in his first relationship. He really has no idea. And when a girl breaks up with you, he goes, okay, we're broken up, and goes to some other girl. He doesn't realize some people just need a minute to talk. They need to reflect. You need to work stuff out. Just because the relationship is over doesn't mean it's over. And it's just stuff that it's funny to see, and it's real to see his emotional immaturity and lack of knowledge in that. And then, obviously, the love triangle, I think, makes another interesting point. But more so, I think the real intention of Lila and the way I like to look at her upon rewatches is just another way to make the season feel more anxiety-inducing. You have Dokes on his case. You have Lundy on his case. And then you have Lila putting pressure on the relationship with him and Rita. Even after he's decided he's no longer interested in Lila, she's still putting pressure on everything she broke into the house. She, broke into his car at one point. Obviously, she went and found Dokes. All these reasons. And obviously, she ends up kind of saving him at the end, which is a little bit of a cop-out. And there really wasn't any other way to get Dexter. One of the great parts about the season is how much pressure he's put under, but he's put under an absurd amount of pressure that there's no real way he can get out of it. So he kind of needed the MacGuffin in her case, which was Lila, to make it realistic as to why he was able to get out. But I think she serves a purpose in the season. While I don't think she's fantastic, I don't think she's bad. And I think overall it evens out.
Yeah,
and it kind of...
The only thing I didn't like about the ending for me this season was the whole scene where she sets her apartment on fire with the kids, Astor and Cody. And I just thought it was kind of cringy where Dexter is rolling around in this fire. It doesn't look so good. I remember just watching that, said to myself, oh, this is kind of weak. It's not as good as the Brian stuff at the very end of season 1 when he has Deb on the table. I thought that was a little bit better of a finale versus season 2.
I agree. Yeah. But I do have to say, you're hard-pressed to find another season of Dexter that has that many incredible moments. The scene on the dock, the scene of him interrogating Doak, or him and Doak's talking to each other in the cage, the scenes with him and Lundy under the gun, the guy who was trying to impersonate the Bay Harbor Butcher, the scenes of all of a sudden just shows on the TV of all the bodies being uncovered. Just the anxiety in that season is unlike any other season. Even season 4 wasn't nearly as anxiety inducing for me. So I got to give it that 9.5 for me.
Fair enough, man. Okay, JT. Well, I don't think we have to focus too long on season 3. I think it's a good season. Not a great season, but I remember enjoying the beginning, kind of like with Freebo. That was enjoyable. I know you're not a big Freebo guy, but I did enjoy that whole storyline.
Actual screen time was like less than 30 seconds.
I know.
And his name was said like 300 times in one season.
But I don't know. Whatever it was about Freebo, he's definitely one of the best side villains that Dexter has to kill. Because eventually it leads all into the Miguel storyline, which is clearly the best storyline of this season. Outside of that, I guess the only thing memorable is the wedding stuff. And then, that's it. I mean, Dokes is dead now. You don't have him anymore.
I believe you get Quinn this season. You get Quinn in season 3, episode 1.
Yeah, but what really bogs this season down for me has got to be the Skinner stuff. I just don't think it's interesting. It's kind of boring. At first, it's Miami Metro's problem.
I thought it gave some intrigue in the beginning, but the Skinner, I felt like, had some moments early on when he's like, oh my God, it's these what's happening, like there's the trim trees or whatever, and they're like, that's the Skinners, it's oh my God, and we're building to this, and then when you kind of reveal it's just this dude George, and he just wants his money, it's like, oh, it's just.
I did like his confrontation with Dexter at the end of the season. That the finale episode is actually really good.
Only because it makes Dexter look so cool.
Yeah, it was great. He's all tied up, and then eventually he breaks out. I think he breaks his neck, and then he throws him over the side. Miami Metro catches him, like, oh, he's dead, and then Dexter just gets away as usual.
That was a cool moment because he's tied up, so he tosses the thing over and breaks his own wrist to get out.
Yes.
And that's why in the wedding he's wearing a cast, and the blood drips down his cast down on the final shot down Rita's wedding dress, to signify that this wedding is not so pure, and ends in blood.
As everything in Dexter does. Well, for me, like I said, love the Miguel stuff where you have Freebo first introduced, eventually goes to Miguel. It's interesting just seeing somebody kill with Dexter, and then Miguel becomes a little bit too corrupt and his mind gets twisted, eventually turns on Dexter. Dexter outsmarts him, which I thought was a little bit lame. Dexter, he's obviously smart, very intelligent, and can out-manipulate anybody. But I thought Miguel could have been a little bit stronger towards the end. And I love it how he just goes right to the Skinner and tries to get his help when it's like, Miguel, come on, man. Can't you just take on Dexter one-on-one? Why do you need the Skinner's help? So I thought that stuff was kind of lame. But Anton's in this season too. And I thought that he was a really nice match for Deb for a while until eventually she goes back to Lundy in the next season.
This is when I started noticing a pattern that you'll see pretty much the entire show with Deborah's character. And it was a really interesting concept that I just don't feel like was fully fleshed out, which was her getting into inappropriate relationships. So season 1, she's normal and she gets in her relationship with Rudy, seemingly good guy, only to see the obviously unfortunate thing. Not only is he her brother's adopted brother's brother, which in her mind, she probably would not have been cool with that, even if he wasn't a serial killer.
Sure.
And of course, he was actually manipulating her the whole time. So that pretty much broke her. And we saw in season 2, she went after Lundy, incredibly inappropriate, co-worker, boss, superior, and of course, an age range that is absurd.
Yeah.
And then now in this season, she's dating a CI, or a criminal informant.
Yep.
And she got in a lot of trouble for that. She had different parts where I think Quinn was giving her a hard time for that, where she had to be careful about different stuff. So, and then you see that's a trend that replays through a couple other seasons of her just being in like inappropriate relationships. And of course, one relationship later on that is the worst thing of all time.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, let's get to the next season. Well, season 4, I think we all can agree that it's the best, or at least most people, unlike Jacob here. He's not the biggest fan of season 4 compared to season 2, as we just discussed. But season 2 is great, whereas season 4 is like one of the greatest seasons of television I've ever seen. And it's all thanks to the Trinity Killer, played by John Lithgow. Remember the first time we watched this season, you're like, oh, look, because I didn't know who the Trinity Killer was. And the very first scene, you see his back, Lithgow's back, as he's walking in to go kill the woman in the bathtub. I remember you said to me, because I kept asking, oh, who's the Trinity Killer? I don't know who this guy is. I have no idea who the actor is. You're like, oh, you know who he is. He walks in frame in the first episode. You're like, look, man, you know him. I'm like, who is that? And you're like, John Lithgow. I'm like, oh, John Lithgow. That's right. I know him. Yeah, Trinity, as I said here, the guy is a menace. I love how he's been a serial killer for 30 years. He's this mystery. And then Dexter, as well as Lundy, who's the one that's been tracking him for all these years, they just both unravel it together. And then eventually Dexter catches on, and he goes to that apartment building, finds him there, killing that guy as his third kill. Mm-hmm. And then this is eventually where Dexter takes on the Kyle Butler persona, which then leads into a friendship with Trinity. And we get a lot of great moments between the two, but some of the best come towards the very end of the season, where we have this Thanksgiving episode that is all out chaos. Eventually, like, the only issue I really have with this season is the very final 10-15 minutes where Trinity, just after outsmarting Dexter this whole season and being one step ahead, Dexter just ends up being a step ahead of him at the end of the day and kills him
for no real reason. Yeah. Like, it wasn't earned. Yeah. He just kind of was.
Yeah, but then it's all redeemed because the ending twist of Trinity getting the last laugh and killing Rita in the bathtub was one of the most shocking, craziest twist endings I've ever seen to any season. So for me, this is hands down the best season of Dexter, and all is because of the Trinity storyline. I love everything about it, and I think you would have to agree it's right up there for one of the best seasons too.
I don't want to be too cringy, but when I think about season 4 a lot, and the reason I have it ranked a little bit below season 2 is because the reason what I think about this season is I compare it a lot to Infinity War. If you're a Marvel fan, that really isn't Avengers Infinity War. It might as well be Thanos Infinity War. It is a movie. Thanos is the main character, and everyone else get over to the side somewhere.
Yeah.
This is not that strong a season for Dexter. Right. He makes a ton of mistakes, and not in Dexter form. He should have killed Trinity when he had him, when he was holding him over the spikes when he tried to kill himself. He should have killed him when he hit the deer and Trinity was looking away and he had the axe aimed right at his neck. Right. Didn't kill him there. Yeah. He had a bunch of other opportunities. It was just a bunch of weird mistakes. He's normally the calm, collected, cold killer. And I get the idea is he's more emotional now. He's growing into his emotions. But it still felt like a little bit out of nowhere. Right. So yeah, but Trinity is this season is Trinity season 4. Yeah. He is the focal point. It is awesome. I just feel like it loses a little bit of Dexter in this season.
I get that.
But the other side characters, I don't really remember any other storylines anyone else is going through.
Well, hold on. Well, you had the whole Christine thing.
You do have Christine and Quinn, and this is when Quinn actually starts to become a character. I really feel like he didn't do much in season 3.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But by season 4, he's a much more established character. I loved how he has a relationship with Christine, who ends up being Trinity's daughter. They don't have a great relationship, so she's hiding the secret the whole season, and then at the end she kills herself, which definitely does not do anything good for Quinn's state of mind, if I had to be honest.
And of course, she kills Lundy too.
Yeah, that's right. So a lot of
The return of Lundy in the season was a huge point.
That was crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, Lundy was great. And then I just said here that one random storyline that I think you could have done without had to be the LaGuardia and Angel romance where they first start dating.
Yeah.
And they had to hide it from Miami Metro for a while. Then eventually at the end, they're like, we're going to get married. And it just felt like it was a shoe-in when they
were divorced by the next season.
Yeah.
Like in the break.
And then season 3, though, he could have been, he was with Barbara.
Yeah, Barbara Gianna.
Yeah, when I thought that was always the better romance.
I think she must have had some other obligation or something. I think I read that.
Know.
She just was completely run out of the show.
Right.
By the end of season 3, they're in arms and everything's great.
Yeah.
And by season 4, he's like, oh yeah, what happened to that chick? Masuka's like, what happened to the girl from whatever department? He's like, oh yeah, we went our own ways. Right. And that was it. Like, I know. He worked all season to get her.
That was dumb. So we didn't give our season 3 grade. Going back to that season real quick, I would say 7.5 out of 10. Solid season, but not great. But then I give season 4 9.5 out of 10. What would you give it?
Yeah, so season 3, I had a 7 out of 10. I'm even a harsher critic than you, which I'm surprised by. And even though I love some of those moments where he's doing the City Hall, and all his hysterics and all that. But season 4, I'd give a 9 out of 10. So I really think it's a half a point below 2, half a point above 1. I'm not saying I hate season 4. I love season 4. Half a point lower in season 2.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. Well, then season 5 is a much different turn for the Dexter TV series because after season 4, a lot of people said that season 5 just wasn't as good. Season 6, 7, 8, whatever. But I personally thought season 5 was pretty good. I think it's better than season 3.
Agreed.
So I don't really know why this season gets slack, but I think it's an overall very enjoyable season. I thought episode 1 of season 5 was just okay, where Rita's dead. They kind of have to address that whole storyline and how Dexter's dealing with it emotionally. So the first episode I didn't think was all that great, but then once you get into the Barrel Girls stuff,
and your boy,
Boyd Fowler, gotta love him. I thought it was so cool too how he just has this moving van, this truck, and he sees a little blood stain on the back on the floor, and he's like, I wonder what that blood is doing there. And he does this deep dive, and then eventually meets Boyd Fowler and all the other Barrel Girls killers. Led by Jordan Chase, of course, who I think is actually a pretty good villain. I can understand why people don't like him, but...
can you name all of them?
No. I mean, Dan the Dentist, Boyd Fowler, Jordan Chase, but then we forget the other two all the time.
I know them.
Who are the other two?
It's Cole Harmon and Alex Tilden.
That's right, Cole Harmon.
Just a bunch of random characters,
Cole Harmon was good too. But I did like all of this stuff. I know that we've talked about this a million times, but... a lot of people had issues with season 5, all because Rita is dead now. He meets Lumen through the Barrel Girl stuff, Dexter, and they spark a relationship because she is the only person who realizes that Dexter is this killer, and then she wants revenge against the people that kidnapped her and did a lot of horrible things to her. And so they get into a relationship, which, by the way, it's Julia Stiles, who I've always loved Julia Stiles ever since 10 Things I Hate About You. I love this relationship. I thought it was a nice little touch. I had no problems with it, but I understand why people don't like Lumen because everyone just loved Rita. So,
and that's the thing. Yeah. I've looked back at all this criticism because I love Julia Stiles. I love Lumen's character. I really think if you go back in time and change this, I think the creators really should have kept Lumen around for multiple seasons, and I think season 6 would have been much improved with her in it. But I will say, from my understanding, when I was doing all my research into why was she perceived so poorly, why is there almost no mention of her again after season 5, and obviously we never see her again. And I went back and saw interviews, Julia Stiles talking about how she did want to stay on, and they decided not to, and they kind of filmed the last little bit where they broke up in the last episode, and she was like, I can't be with you anymore.
Right.
kind of like on at a last minute sort of thing.
Sure.
And she even herself said, I don't think Lumen would do that. She said, I don't think Lumen's character would leave him like that after everything they went through. But they're really smart writers. Look how good they did season 4. So, and some of that stuff, I think it's ridiculous. People are going, oh, Lumen, you're trying to replace Rita. They didn't share a kiss until the last 2 or 3 episodes of the entire season.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, that was a slow burn.
It was slow.
They only slept together once or twice. It was very late in the season. Yeah. I mean, he didn't even meet Lumen until I think an episode 3 or 4 or something like that.
Yep.
And then they didn't form a friendship. They were pretty much bickering at each other back and forth until really season 6 or 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. So that was a slow burn, I think. Totally deserved.
Right.
I don't think it needed all that criticism.
Right. No, I completely agree. I don't really have any issues with it. Like I said, I thought it was a nice little touch to this season, and it adds more development to Dexter's character. A few other random storylines from this season. You got the Fuentes brothers, as well as Deb and Quinn. They hook up. They start dating. I mean, it was all right, but I was okay with other guys like Anton dating Deb. I don't really...
This is like more of Deb getting in bad relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously season 4, she went back to Lundy, same problem as earlier. And then season 5 now, again, dating a coworker.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
just Deb and coworkers is just...
It's definitely...
ridiculous.
And then meanwhile, you have Quinn in the season teaming with Stan Liddy, who finds out some information and that maybe Dexter could be Kyle Butler because has the sketch, and then Liddy's onto him. He's trying to get his get back into the police force and get everything he says he deserves because he got fired for something. I actually kind of like that storyline with Quinn being on to Dexter, just like how Dokes was in season 2. But for me, this was a good season mainly because of the Barrel Girls. I don't think there's really anything else that stands out as good as that in this season.
I'd argue these are your most hated group of killers. Because what they did, I mean, all of them are murderers. All the people are, murderers. But these guys were so sadistic.
Yeah, terrible.
And they didn't just kill people. It was rapes and torture.
It's horrible.
And they seemed to enjoy it. It seemed to not just be a compulsion, but give them some sort of happiness or joy or satisfaction. And it is absolutely detestable. And I think it makes the season a little bit more compelling because, story-wise, I think they're pretty weak on the story with those characters. Not much background. I mean, there's so many of them. It's hard to give them each their own storyline. Even Jordan Chase, not a ton of storyline there. But and I think that's why they get a lot of criticism because you're coming off someone like Trinity who has the most storyline of any.
Hey, come on, man! You gotta love when he gets on the stage. He's an inspirational speaker. I thought that stuff was
great moment, but I still know jack about Jordan Chase.
That's fair.
But it's fair. Trinity, we saw the entire season.
Yeah, true. All right, well, I'm gonna give this season an 8 out of 10. Jacob?
Yeah, you went from a 7.5 in season 3 to an 8 out of 10 for this, and I went from a 7 to now 7.5. So I agree, half a point higher. I'm at 7.5 here.
All right, cool. All right, well, season 6 is where it actually really went downhill for both of us. So, funny enough, Jacob, I wrote in here that the killers are the blah blah killers when they're actually DDK. DDK. Yeah, whatever. They're the blah blah killer. They don't matter.
Doomsday killers.
It's Colin. Killer. Yeah, killer. Yeah, right. It's Colin Hanks, who is the son of Tom Hanks. Wow, that's the only thing I've actually seen him in is this season.
Yeah, there's a reason.
But yeah, right. I like the guy. I like the guy as an actor. I thought he did fine. I actually don't really hate the twist at the end of the season either in the second to last episode.
You ruined my favorite show, Colin.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Hey, he's going to see this and be like, hey, who was this guy? His dad is very famous, though. One of the most popular actors of all time. So.
Run, Colin, run.
Yeah. But I said here that it's a very uninteresting storyline. Everything... Their motivation is just religion. Oh, this is the will of God. This is what he wants you to do. Who's Colin? I can't remember their names. I just have no idea.
His actors, the actor in the show.
No, the characters' names. Colin,
that's what I mean. Travis Marshall.
Travis Marshall, and then what's the other guy?
Professor Geller.
Professor Geller. So
professor.
It just gets really boring how how Geller just keeps wanting Colin Hanks to kill all these people because it's the will of God. It's what God needs you to do. And it's just never interesting. It's very boring. I remember just watching in pain. I was suffering watching every single episode. I don't know how we got through it. This is probably one of the fastest seasons we got through. I don't even know how that's possible, but that was the case with season 6. I guess we just force-fed it down our throats and just watched it. But yeah, it's just a very boring season in my opinion. I don't think there's too many interesting things that happen here. I know that you like the first half with Brother Sam and the whole Nick scene, and then the scene where they go to, what was it, like Nebraska. Yeah, because Brian comes back. You like all that stuff.
Yeah, I will say, I think one of the things that happens with season 6 is you remember the ending and the last 3 or 4 episodes of all the seasons. And I think that's how a lot of people judge your season. So I think that's why season 3 gets a lot of criticism, because it's awesome in the beginning half with Miguel. Then he starts taking off a little, and then the Skinner starts plummeting. And overall, people go, season's not that great. And then I think with season 4, it climaxes in the end and is the greatest ending of any of season. So that's why it's seen as the best. So I think that's what happens in this season. I think the last 3-4 episodes, I'd say every episode post the Nebraska episode, which I want to say is episode 6, maybe 7. Yeah, every episode after that is horrible. Yeah. But I think people look at that and have a hard time remembering how actually interesting the first couple episodes were. I think if you finish the season really strong, it's looked at as a great season. I think that first half got you. It's like a quarterback in your football team. They got you to the red zone, but the team didn't score. So all you think is the team didn't score. But they got you all the way down there.
They did.
It's like a little Carson Wentz on the 2017 Eagles. Got him to the playoffs. Right. But he didn't win the Super Bowl or nothing. But he got him there. I think the first half did great.
I remember being very bored by this season, and then you have the reveal that Professor Geller actually has been dead this entire time because Colin Hanks killed him or whatever, froze his body. And I didn't really mind that twist. I thought it was actually pretty surprising and somewhat good. But then you think about it, it's like, oh wait, this is so stupid because Colin Hanks killed his own sister earlier on in the season. It wasn't Geller that did it.
Right. So off screen too. Yeah, you don't see that crushing moment of him with like he can't even understand it. Like he's so gone.
Right. So they're just really lame, and it's just not a good storyline. Plus Dexter doesn't even get involved with those killers until like halfway through the season.
It's really a Miami Metro thing.
Yeah, it really is.
He does have some cool side kills where he kills that guy at his high school reunion. Yeah. And like the first episode, like that was kind of cool. Yep. This is the only season of the show where he has no love interest. Right. Which is an interesting turn. I think it's because they got so much hate for Lumen. So like, all right, guys, no love interest. Yeah. I think a love interest would have been nice in my opinion. And like I said, it should have been Lumen. It shouldn't have been a new character. It should have continued to have been Lumen. Yep. But in that way, I think you would have had a little bit more of Travis could have put her in a precarious situation, which would have made the season feel more pressured. But instead he had the thing where he like kidnapped Harrison at the end. For sure. I don't know, a little bit weird.
It was dumb.
I do just want to say, people who just blindly hate on season 6, I get it. I didn't give it a good review, I promise. But seriously, Mos Def kills it as Brother Sam. He's awesome. His conversation, just go back and watch, just Google Brother Sam and talking with Dexter, and they have such great chemistry and they have such deep conversations. You get the most emotionally out of Dexter from those conversations. And then, of course, heartbreakingly, when Brother Sam gets shot, you don't know by who, he dies in the hospital, you figure out that it's Nick, the guy he was trying to save from the gangs and the violence. And he, with his dying breath, goes, Dexter, please forgive him. And Dexter actually says, no, I won't do it. And his Brother Sam convinces him. He goes there thinking, I'm not going to kill him. He wants him to turn himself in. He still wants him to, be guilty. But he was not going to kill him, which is insane for Dexter. He was, and then only when Nick taunts him and says, nobody can do anything. Yeah. And then Dexter brings out that rage in him and chokes him out in the water is a brutal, awesome scene. It was cool. I think I love it extra because it's in such an underappreciated season. And then, of course, you see the moment of his brother coming back, Brian coming back out of the water. and it's holy crap, what's going on, and then it ends.
Yeah. No, that stuff was good. That stuff was good. There were a few redeeming elements, and that's why I give this season a 5 out of 10. But you always sort of forget about the crappy little storyline where you have Deb and Quinn break up after Quinn proposes to her after a year. So that was just a disaster. Then eventually it leads into Deb falling in love with Dexter, which was horrible. Meanwhile, you have this intern come to Miami Metro that becomes a little bit too fond of Dexter. I didn't really care for that storyline too much. There's just a couple of very forgettable storylines on top of the already terrible DDK killer storyline. This is a very forgettable
We did get
storyline.
the introduction, we didn't say, of Detective Mike Anderson in the season, which is actually a good character. I liked him.
You liked him.
He was the first smart cop we've seen since Lundy.
It's true. It's true. I know, because Angel and Quinn are just complete
idiots.
dumbass.
I love them.
Listen, you can say this on the show, but they are dumbasses. They are dumbasses. Yeah. So I mean, that's one thing. But yeah, so 5 out of 10 for me. Did you give your score yet? 6. Okay. All right. You like a little bit more.
So season 6. I should give it a 6.6 and do the 666. That's the whole religion
you just
angle,
make me
right?
want to give this a 3 at this point. It's so bad. It's
Mom's
so
deaf,
bad.
baby.
It's so bad.
Nebraska.
Season 7 started picking the pace back up quite a bit because after that disaster that was season 6, it actually ended on quite the cliffhanger. I thought that was one of the only other redeeming elements that we got from season 6, where Deb finally sees Dexter as a killer. He kills Colin Hanks. She's right there in the church with him. And then that gives us an excellent storyline in season 7. The first 2 episodes of this season were some of the best that I remember from all of Dexter, where Deb is slowly figuring out all this stuff about Dexter, what he does. And I think at first he tries hiding it that, I'm not a serial killer. I only just killed him. And then she goes into his apartment, sneaks in there, finds his entire kit with all the knives and
season
and
7, episode 1.
Yeah.
The title, I'll never forget the title. Are you ...
Yes, yeah. So that was so good. I love everything. You come off that disaster that was season 6 with the Deb falling in love with Dexter storyline.
We don't talk about that in Bossing Say.
They barely, maybe a little bit in season 8, but season 7, they mostly forget about it. But I loved everything with Deb and Dexter. This was their season. And eventually when LaGuardia gets tangled into it, she realizes, oh my God, after all this time, I didn't see it, but I see it now. Dexter is the Bay Harbor Butcher. So then she catches on to both Dexter and I believe Deb too. Yeah. And that's where this season really gets good. But before that even happens, right after you have a few episodes of just Deb figuring out who Dexter is and his entire backstory, I love the best side villain in this entire season, Ray Speltzer. That was absolutely hands down the best side villain, and it took 7 seasons to get there, but we finally got there. We got a great villain. He kind of looks like Stone Cold. He's a big guy, There's barely any character development for any of these side kills, but Ray Speltzer was like one of the few that I thought was a standout. It was him and one of Jordan Chase's henchmen and a few other guys that are just whatever. But Speltzer was good. But yeah, you said for many years before we ever got to season 7 that it was one of low-key your favorites, maybe even top 3 season for you.
Yeah, I absolutely love season 7. I think there's a couple reasons. I always like to lead with this because I think not a lot of people appreciate the romance in the show. I've brought it up a couple times. I think it's very underappreciated, so I always like to lead with it. I thought Hannah was awesome in this season. She was, I thought, as a love interest, really interesting for Dexter. You got to see... I forgot about her. You got to see Rita, which is the innocent... She knows nothing about Dexter's bad side. And she thinks the worst thing about him is that he's a drug user. Lady, wait till you figure it out. Yeah. She's the innocent. She loves him, but she loves the one side of him. And then you see Lila, who is more obsessed with his dark nature, could give less of a crap about Dexter the person, or Dexter and his dad and his sister and his relationships. She just loves his killer side to him. Then you see Lumen, who more needed him. She wasn't really looking for a relationship, neither was he. They kind of just needed each other. He needed to get over him feeling like he was the reason Rita died, which is true. And so he wanted to be the reason he saved someone else. He wanted to almost, pay it back. Like, I can't save Rita, but maybe if I save Lumen, my conscience will feel better. I'll feel better. There's something I can do. And of course, Lumen needed him to get her way out of the situation. So I did really like the relationship. I was hoping it would blossom into something more as we continued. And I thought I could have, but as it ended, it was really more like they needed each other and she needed him. And then needed his darkness, really. And not really afterwards, didn't really need him anymore. And then Hannah didn't need him at all.
Yeah.
Just loved him.
Yeah.
And totally accepted his dark passenger, but was okay whether he killed or not.
Right.
She wasn't turned on or excited or anything by him being a killer. She was like, take it or leave it. You're going to go kill? Cool. Do you need help? No? Great. You're not going to go kill? Cool. You want to help make dinner? She was just along for the ride of Dexter, and it was a really good character. Together real well.
It's pretty funny here because I did write how the middle of the season I didn't really care too much about it because you have Quinn with the stripper, then you get introduced to Hannah as well, and that was a romance. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is kind of lame. I don't really like Hannah that much. I'm not really sure if I am all here for that. But then you also have the Deb and Dexter storyline with LaGuerta getting onto it. And then you got Ray Spelter just randomly thrown in there in the first 3 to 4 episodes, as well as Isaac Serco. So I think this was a very messy season, but it all comes together very nicely by the end, and that's why I do love this season. I think it's a great season as well.
Back-to-back seasons with incredible finales.
Yeah.
Season 6, of course, that final scene, and season 12 finale, absolutely incredible. Yeah. I'll get to that in a second, but like you said, Isaac Serco, loved him. He wasn't super intimidating. He didn't put Dexter really under the gun or anything.
I do think that's the thing.
But he was good.
They had a little confrontation. I remember they're on the phone together and they're looking at each other from a distance.
When he comes to the table and that moment, I love that moment.
Yeah, or when they is that when they sit at the bar? Remember they're at the bar together and he's explaining that, oh, you killed my lover.
At the gay bar.
Yes.
That was a great scene. There's also a scene where he's outside at the restaurant and he has no idea Isaac's going to come up to him. And Isaac actually comes up and sits next to him and he has this kind of face-off. And that's where Dexter tells him he's trying to incite Dexter. Why did you kill him? I know you killed him. Why did you do it? And Dexter's like, oh, I didn't do anything. I'm not the guy who did this. Yep. And eventually Dexter breaks and he's trying to see the monster inside of him. And eventually Dexter breaks and he has the line. I might butcher it, but his line is something along the lines of, I killed your boyfriend or husband or whatever. I crushed I wrapped him in a plastic bag and I crushed his skull with a fire extinguisher. And I'm going to do the same to you, give or take the fire extinguisher.
Yep.
And then that moment was just pure anger on his face. And then you go back to Isaac's face and it's this anger, but this deep sadness. And he just gets up and Dexter really thinks he's going to go for a punch, pull out his gun, whatever. And he pulls out $1 or a couple bucks or whatever and pays for his meal. Right. And then walks away. And it was this tension building moment. I love that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think Serco is easily one of the best aspects and new additions to season 7. It's a shame that they had to kill him towards the end, but I love his character development. He goes from who you think is going to be the main villain of the season, when in reality it's actually just Dexter.
LaGuerta.
And LaGuerta. But she's like Dokes, not really a villain, more of an anti-hero. Dexter is...
Isaac Serco is the better version of the Skinner. Yeah. Because the main person this season is Miguel. Yeah. The main person Dexter's going against is LaGuerta.
For sure.
And this is what the Skinner should have been.
And then I said here that they should have just gotten rid of DDK in season 6 and switched them with Isaac. Have him be the main villain who eventually, I guess you could have him become a good guy at the end of season 6 or whatever. And then just have season 7 focus mainly on Deb and Dexter. That was the only thing with season 7. It's just, there's a lot of things going on. And you have Hannah who I guess turned in by Dexter at the end of the season.
And there was a lot of, if you remember, there was a lot of episodes dedicated to Hannah and Hannah's old boyfriend and Dexter. And like, there was a lot of time spent into that.
And the Phantom that was randomly in there.
That was the guy with the flamethrower.
Yeah. So,
the Phantom.
But I give this season an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I give it an 8. I put it half a point below season 1.
Okay.
I love it. I really, really love it. I just don't think you can take a season where Isaac Circle and LaGuerta are your main opposition for Dexter and say that's better than the Ice Truck Killer.
I agree.
So I had to put a half point below that for me.
That's fair. Okay, well, just when I thought Dexter was redeemed, I knew it was going to come crashing down in season 8 because everyone said so, including this man right here, Jacob. He told me many times that the season...
Did I ruin it for you? Didn't give you a chance?
I don't know. I probably would have been happier if I never knew how Dexter ended. I didn't know how it ended, but if people didn't say that it was so bad. And I mean, obviously, that you couldn't avoid telling me that because if I just went online, everyone would agree. My brother has seen the show. He said that it was really bad. So Dexter season 8 is extremely disappointing. I thought it was going to be disappointing for other reasons. Like, I didn't realize that the show ends on such a low, dumb, dull note. I thought it was going to be like this crazy, weird finale that's just completely out of left field, makes absolutely no sense. Whereas in reality, it's more so just like a whatever finale. So like the beginning of the season is not that great. You have Deb, who's all upset about having to kill LaGuerta at the end of season 7. It makes sense, but like it just feels like all this stuff is happening a bit too late. I don't know why. It just feels like it's too many seasons too late. Like I think it's just it doesn't even it's the complete opposite of feeling rushed. It just feels like they took way too long to have this type of storyline for Deb. And I'm like, oh, I don't even care anymore. Like it's just why? It's the last season. We don't really have time for this right now.
We don't.
And it needs to be about Dexter on the run and getting away from law enforcement and whoever else. So I didn't really like how the season started. And then you get introduced to Dr. Vogel, who reveals herself to be friends with Harry before he died, and she helped Harry create the code. And I didn't really mind Vogel. I kind of liked how they brought her into the fold in this season. But again, it's another thing that I just thought was brought up too late. Then there's this brain surgeon storyline that's on the side here that at first you think is resolved. They think they find the brain surgeon, and that ends up not being the guy after all. It's actually in reality Dr. Vogel's son. That's revealed towards the end of the season after you thought that he was dead and gone. So the brain surgeon is like, you think it's not really that big of a storyline. Because for a while, like once the brain surgeon, the original brain surgeon is killed off, then you lead into like this, the Hannah storyline getting brought back in where you think that she might want to have revenge on Dexter and Deb for turning her in. So then they focus a lot on that and Dexter and Hannah's relationship and trying to get her out, when in reality, it's like, why are we focusing on Hannah and her trying to flee the country and get away from law enforcement when it should just be about Dexter doing that for himself? It just doesn't make any sense. It's all very random, and it doesn't feel like a season 8 finale. It's a very, just like the whole the series finale here in season 8 is all very feels very tacked on. There's no like high stakes situations. You're just kind of sitting there like, oh, I could go for a nap now. It's not interesting. It's not intriguing.
So, in my opinion, obviously, and just because it's the fact, just because it's the truth, most people, when they talk about season 8, are going to just talk about how bad it is. And everyone knows how bad it is. We can touch on that. I'll wrap that up. But I really want to spend time on things I like about the season. And I'm not trying to convince anyone it's a good season. But I love Dexter. And I legitimately love every season. And when I rewatch the show, I don't skip season 8. I don't skip a single episode in season 8. And there's a lot of episodes I really enjoy. Now, I enjoy them because I love the show and I love the characters, and I don't care if they were sitting there singing the alphabet, I'd still want to watch. But, so I'm going to focus on some things I do really like about this season. So I thought at first, watching it with Andrew, I was really thinking, what would Andrew be thinking right now, not knowing how this show ends, not knowing who these characters turn into, who the brain surgeon is, what the payoff is, what happens. What would you be thinking? And I found myself trying to put myself in those shoes and thinking, this Vogel character is really interesting. Like, she's got a lot of potential. I remember thinking, like, yeah, Deb was getting a little bit annoying and it was getting a little bit much, but the range and the acting she had, she's an incredible actress. And that is how I expect her to act after having to kill a Huerta in season 7. It is completely on brand. It is, I wouldn't expect anything else. Now, you could argue that the season doesn't have time for it. It doesn't. And there should have been another season. This should have happened earlier, so it had its time. It shouldn't have been in the finale season.
And plus, don't forget, Deb is working for the side.
Elway.
Yeah,
she's working, now she's working for Elway.
Yeah.
That whole Elway could have gotten thrown out. I don't care for that at all. And I didn't feel like that really played much of a important part of the season until like towards the end.
And he could have been a good love interest, in my opinion, to send off Deb in a nice way, but we know how that all went.
Deb's acting was really, really good.
Great, yeah.
Him with Vogel was really good. Mm-hmm. I thought Vogel had a lot of really good moments. Yeah. Talking to Dexter, you remember towards the end, they ended an episode on her going, "You can't kill me, that's not in your code." And you're like, oh, what? Yeah. How does she know what the code is? That was a really exciting ending. It was like episode 2 or episode 1.
Yeah.
And of course, build, doesn't really pay off in the way we like it, but it kept some excitement early on. Right. And I'm sitting there watching the show and almost thinking, like, I hope it ends different this time. Even though I know it's not possible.
Yeah, so looking back, the show ends where Deb is shot by Vogel's son, who is the new brain surgeon. He's been the brain surgeon all along.
Oliver Saxon, baby.
Yeah. So he ended up killing Dexter's new neighbor, this hot chick. Cassie killed her. So yeah, it's revealed that he's the brain surgeon. Who's the guy that lets the brain surgeon go?
The federal marshal.
The federal marshal. So then, is it the brain surgeon that kills Deb at the very end?
It was Saxon who shot her.
It was Saxon that shot her. So then,
so he was tied up. Dexter had him for the kill. And in season 4, Trinity, he doesn't kill Trinity. This is a topic everyone loves to say. In season 4, he lets Trinity go. He constantly doesn't kill him. And everyone says, well, Dexter learns from his mistakes. He will never make that mistake again by not killing someone when he has him. And he has the brain surgeon dead to rights, leaves him. Yeah. And because of that, it results in Deb's death. So the federal marshal goes in, sees this guy tied up, and by the way, that dude's face was plastered everywhere. Yeah, we had the moment where he's at the gas station, he saw his face everywhere. He was totally exposed. And a federal marshal of all people should absolutely recognize him. Terrible. And he goes in, sees him strapped up, unties him. The guy instantly gets a knife out and kills the federal marshal. Right as Deb's walking in, they shoot each other. Deb gets hit in the stomach, he gets hit in the leg, and then they kind of escape. And then they say, "Oh, Deb's going to make a full recovery. She's not doing too bad. She's looking good." And then all of a sudden, they capture the brain surgeon as he's lured in, and he's lured in to kill her, so she doesn't talk about him. Yep. She only came back there because he thought she was going to pull through. Right. And then only to figure out, oh no, there was a complication. Yeah, you killed off Deborah Morgan from a complication to the worst killer in the entire franchise. I'd rather the Skinner have killed her.
I know. No, it was brutal. Terrible. No, so Deb dies. Dexter ends up killing Saxon.
In a really cool scene, too.
It was a cool scene, but like...
Stabs him in here, pulls him out.
It's just, again, it's a little bit too late for this kind of stuff. Like, I don't need it. It doesn't need to be in the season. None of this stuff, I didn't care about any of it. Like, Vogel ends up dying, too, from Saxon.
That was kind of a cool moment.
It was cool.
They turned the lights on. He slices her throat in front of Dexter.
Yeah, like, no, that was cool. But overall, it's all pretty forgettable. And then, think about it. It's all in the back seat because Hannah trying to get away is the main storyline for the last couple episodes.
No pressure on Dexter at all.
It's so
dumb.
The gun, and then, you know what? Hannah ends up getting away with Harrison. And then...
Argentina.
They go to Argentina. And then Dexter takes Deb's body, puts her out to sea. You think that he's going to kill himself. Then it cuts away to him being a lumberjack. And that's how the show ends.
The idea was that he tried to kill himself and he like got through and somehow missed it and was, washed to shore. And the idea that some other force is keeping him alive So he will continue. That's the concept. But I hate the idea of leaving Deb out in the water where he put all the other killers. She should have had her cop funeral where they shoot the guns and they remember her, and Quinn should have had a chance to mourn her. There should have been a viewing for everyone who truly loved her. Yeah. And all that stuff. I'll say Dexter's got there's a couple good moments in season 8. Some of the Vogel stuff, some of showing Deborah the interviews with Harry, where Harry's like, oh my God, what do I do? It's so interesting seeing that combined with current Deborah. Like, what the hell do I do? Hannah coming back for a moment was interesting, and for an episode or two, and then just kind of falls off and doesn't really get anywhere. And then you always have that terrible treadmill scene that everyone loves with Harrison running and then busting his chin.
It's like they just stop caring about acting. They stop caring about writing. They stop caring about execution. None of it mattered anymore. They just wanted to get the show over with. And
I love reading people like Harrison should just died right there.
Like I said, I expected to have a bizarre, crazy ending that wouldn't have made any sense, but at least that would have been better than the garbage that we got at the end of the show.
So those a couple things were good, and something you haven't mentioned yet, an important part of this season, Zach Hamilton was an awesome character this season.
Yeah, no, he was good.
Protege.
It reminded me of
this shouldn't have been the finale. Yeah. He would have been great in another season.
Well, like I said, too, they should have kept him alive and then just made a spin-off series with him as the new version of Dexter. I think that would have been pretty cool.
Would have been so cool.
The only thing was, I like Zach, the actor, but I didn't think he was as good, or at least good enough to have his own show.
Maybe not, but he shouldn't have died the way he died. He died off screen.
Yeah, that was bad.
He died off screen.
That was bad. So, yeah.
And I think overall, the greatest moment of this entire season is when he's hoping to revive Deborah. At the very end,
it was nice.
He's,
when she says,
cute little moment.
Or he says, "I love you, Deb."
He says, "I love you" to her. Yeah. He turns off her machine and stares. Hopefully, you get a close up of his eyes, looking back and forth, trying to see. He put his ear on her mouth because the doctor said she can pull through on their own in some cases, and you struggle to breathe a little. The heartbeat's there, and then it fades.
Yeah.
And it was really well done emotionally.
It was nice. There was a couple nice little ending moments, but as a whole, one of the most disappointing, useless endings of any TV show I've ever seen. This should have been like the ending of Breaking Bad, where unfortunately it just ended up being terrible, in my opinion. Yep. But it's, as a season, I remember watching it and thinking, this is actually not that bad. I actually enjoyed this season more than season 6. I think it's more interesting. There's more riveting storylines and I guess things that gripped me a bit more. But just as a whole, as the ending, it's very unfortunate this is how it had to end. So I would say this is a 5.5 out of 10 for me. What would you go with?
4.
4, okay.
Did you rank this higher than season 6?
I would say I enjoyed it more than season 6. As a whole, it's a better season just in terms of like storylines. There really is nothing redeemable in season 6, man.
First half of the season,
the Brother
baby.
Sam stuff is all right, but I'd rather watch the Zach Hamilton stuff. I'd rather watch some of the Hannah stuff that I thought was interesting. But like season
brain
6
surgeon man, I hate him.
Whatever.
He killed Deb. It's the season finale.
That's all right. Well, if we could rank the seasons real quick before we go here, I would just say season 4 easily. I would go with then in second place season 1. Season 2, I usually nowadays say season 7 would have to be fourth place, followed by season 5, then season 3, 8, 6. I'm sure you'll be a little bit different.
I'm pretty similar, yeah. Instead of season 4 at the top, I got 2, so I'm 2, 4, 1, then 7, 5, 3, 6, 8.
Cool.
So I got the 7, 5, 3 just like you. Just the 6, 8 flopped.
Yeah.
So,
cool, man.
I'm right there.
All right. Well,
how much time do we got left in this?
We got to wrap up now, but any closing thoughts?
I just want to say, incredible show. I thank this guy for sitting through the torture of it in those 2 seasons.
Yeah.
But I made him wait, take breaks, not watch anymore tonight.
Yeah.
I was all over him about that. And There was a lot of times that he wanted to watch a whole season of stuff on his own, and he watched some of the stuff on his own. But for the most part, we watched everything together. And there was definitely some moments where he was like, JT, I want to watch another episode.
Yeah, I know.
And I appreciate him sticking it out
man.
with me.
Thank you again, man. I appreciate it. Great show. And we got to do this again sometime with not only watching a show together, but watching or doing a podcast together. That'd be
Absolutely.
sick. So
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on, my man.
Yeah, of course.
Been a
Appreciate you
pleasure.
having me.
Well, thank you guys as always so much for watching this, and we do hope to do more of these. And Jacob, next time we'll get you a camera. My apologies for that. All right. Well, thanks guys. We appreciate it. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know all your thoughts about Dexter if you have watched the show, and we'll catch you in the next video.